Today we have something that I think can benefit any type of editor, no matter what type of video you are making. We're going to be talking about creating smooth, slow motion, and flow in your videos. This is something that I've seen a lot of tutorials on YouTube about in the past, but in my opinion, I feel like for the amount of information about this out there, there's not a lot of people that are utilizing it, and I think there's still a lot of untapped potential for what you can do with this, no matter what type of video you are creating. So let's go ahead and get right into this. We're going to start in After Effects, and also at the end, I'll show you in Adobe Premiere. As always, leave a like on the video if you do enjoy. It helps a huge amount. Subscribe if you guys are new and you'd like to see more content like this, and comment below what you'd like to see next. So before we bring this clip into After Effects, the number one thing you need to understand going into this is what really creates smooth motion, and this comes down to how the clip was shot or recorded. So if I reveal this clip in the project, you're going to see that this shot was filmed at 120 frames per second, 1920 by 1080. And if you're confused by frames per second, the easiest way to understand frames per second, each of those 24 frames is a picture making up 1 second of video. So if I was to right click on this 24 frames per second clip and go to speed duration, and let's just make it 50. So we're going to stretch this out to make it slow motion. And if I do the same with my 120 frames per second clip, so right click, speed duration, make it 50. Let's just watch the playback of both of these played at 50% speed. So as you see, very choppy. It's not as smooth. It's not that smooth slow motion that we're looking for. And on the flip side, if you look at the 120 frames per second, it's very smooth and you get that slow motion that you're looking for. So you need to know this going in. If you want that smooth slow motion, go for 60 frames or above, because when we're speeding up and slowing down the clip using these techniques I'm about to show you, you want to make sure you're getting the outcome you're truly after. So now that I've explained that, let's bring these into Adobe After Effects. I'm going to right click and I'm going to replace with After Effects Composition to bring this into After Effects. So now that we are in After Effects, if we go up to composition settings, you'll see that my frame rate for my composition is set to 24 frames per second here, but we're using 60 frames per second clips. So that's another thing. So you want your composition frame rate to be lower, like 24 or 30, but you want your clips to be around 60, 120. So starting off, you're going to want to right click on your clip, go to time and enable time remapping. Shortcut for that is Control-Alt-T if you're wondering. What you want to do is you want to go to the very beginning, and next to this little stopwatch, you'll see the keyframe button. Go ahead and click that at the beginning. Next, you scroll to the end. At the end of the clip, there should already be a keyframe, but if there isn't, go ahead and create a keyframe at the end of your shot as well. Now, the easiest way to explain this is this keyframe is a marker for this exact frame in the video. Same for this one as well. So every time I create a keyframe in the time remapping, that keyframe serves as a marker for that specific frame. So if I was to go to the middle here and create a keyframe by clicking this button again, and if I was to just drag this around the timeline, what it's going to do is it's going to remap the time so that this specific frame that you marked is now faster or slower. So if we drag it closer to the beginning, you're going to see this is all sped up. And flip side, if we take the frame that we marked from the middle and we drag it out, this is going to be very slow. So I think that's the easiest way to understand it. I think there's a lot of misconception and a lot of people get confused when creating this. Say you want to have a clip where it starts out normal speed, and then at a specific moment, such as right here, we want it to slowly shift into slow motion. To do that, you find the frame where you want the slow motion to start, such as right here. And again, we're going to create a time remapping keyframe. So technically, we're marking this exact frame. So click here. And let's just drag for as long as we want the slow motion to last. So we want it to be slow motion up until he starts to look to the left. So right here, we're going to mark the second frame. So now we have 2 keyframes marking the area that we'd like to slow down. So remember what I told you at the beginning. If you take these keyframe frame markers and you drag them towards the beginning, they're going to come up a lot faster. So you'll see very sped out and then normal speed. And then flip side, if you drag those out, it's going to be slow motion. Now you can do the same technique by moving the specific marked frames. So say you want this part to be slow motion, I can take this end part and drag it out. So now it'll be normal speed, and then at that marked point, it goes into slow motion and then back into normal speed. So that's the main gist of it, just understanding the keyframes, what they represent, and how to manipulate them to get the look that you want. Okay, so what we explained so far is the 2 most important things. Number 1, understanding frame rate, and number 2, understanding the time remapping keyframes and how to change them to get what you'd like. Once you understand those 2 things, the rest of this video is more just useful tips to improve the look. And then of course, we're gonna show you how to transition smoothly from one clip to the next and create that flowing look that we're after. So starting off with some useful tips to improve the look. Number one, I recommend in your switches here, you're going to see this clip which enables frame blending. Check that on for your composition, as well as for all the layers that you're trying to do this time remapping look on. So for this layer, you'll see it looks like this little film strip. You can check it, and we're actually going to check it twice so that it gives you the best possible frame blend. The next thing you want to do is you want to select all of your keyframes here, right click on them, go to Keyframe Assistant, and set them to Easy Ease. So this is going to smooth out the animation a bit, and to get even further into this, we're going to go into our graph editor. So you'll see next to the switch that we turned on earlier, you're going to see this little graph editor switch. Go ahead and click that. So if you're not seeing anything on the screen for your graph, make sure that you've selected your clip. I'm also going to right click on the graph here, and I'm going to make sure I'm in edit value graph and not edit speed graph. We can actually select the keyframe, and you can manipulate this graph so that you can smooth it out however you'd like. You want to make sure that you don't do too much of a curve here, because as you see, if I play this, it kind of just reverses and then goes forward. We want more of like a standstill moment where you can really catch an eye for that slow motion. The best way to look at this graph, in my opinion, is to view the loops as speed. So if your graph is going up, that means it's going to get faster. If your graph is going down, that means it's going to be slower. I also want to mention this plugin right here, Flow, on After Effects. This is non-sponsored, but this is an extension that gives you a lot of pre-made curves for your animation. So if you're looking for some preset looks to just try out on your videos, I think this is only $30, so I'll leave a link to that below. All right, guys, so we talked about the basics and how to do this in After Effects. Now let's actually bring the footage in. Let's bring in some music. Let's sync together a sequence like how we had it at the beginning of this video. I'll play that on the screen now if you don't remember what that looked like. And then we're gonna use all of the tricks that we were talking about to fully bring this together into something that we can use. So I'm going to select all of the footage, including the audio file, right click, and I'm going to replace with After Effects composition to bring it into After Effects. So step number one, always select your clip. You want to click Control, Alt, and T to initialize this time remapping. It'll pop up here. And now we can set our keyframes at the beginning and end of each of our clips. So we'll click this little keyframe button, and we'll go through and we'll do that at the end as well. Now let's select the second clip, Control, Alt, T, keyframe. All right, so now let's grab the audio file that we dragged in here and let's just put it at the very top. And this is the difference between the beginning and the transition part. We're going to sync this to the music. So to do that, let's open up our audio file here. Let's go to audio and open up the waveform. And this way we can see all of the patterns of the audio so that we can sync everything to all the kicks, the snares, the bass drops that we would like. Whenever you hear those kicks, or you can even just go by the big spikes in the audio waveform here, we're going to click the star key on our numpad, the asterisk. It should be above the 9 on your numpad. Go ahead and click that with your audio layer selected, and you're going to place this little marker here on the audio layer. So that's how we can create our little markers for where we need to sync our keyframes. I'm going to go through and just add a few of those. All right, so I added in my markers where all of these little spikes in the waveforms happen. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create my keyframes where I'd like the footage to slow down. So these are parts in the clips that I'd like to highlight. So maybe like right here while he's rolling his head, we'll go ahead and select the clip and make a keyframe. And once he finishes that, we'll also make a keyframe. And we'll keep going down the list. So select your next clip, find the place that you'd like to highlight. So maybe like right there where he comes out of the light. All right, so I want to make it so that his head whipping in this clip is the transition from this into the next clip. So as soon as we have that clap, I'm going to quickly go into the next one. I wanted to kind of have this beginning part last a lot more slow. So I moved about 6 frames. And I just took this beginning keyframe and I moved it over. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move back 1 frame. And to move back 1 frame, I'm just clicking page up and page down on my keyframe to move frame by frame. So I'm going to click page up. I'm going to click another keyframe and I'm going to drag that to the beginning. So now what we have is this little beginning part kind of frozen in time, just minimal movement, and then you'll see it kind of whips into the part we'd like. So now that we have that whip, I'm just going to finish off this clip here. And again, this is the marker where we want the clip to end. So I'm just going to take this end keyframe and just place it right where that marker is. And then once I've done that, this is the whole duration I want for this clip. So at this point, I'm just going to drag this, cut it off, and then we can drag over our next clip, which is going to transition in. So this is what we made. So it's going to freeze, whip into the next shot. So freeze, whip into the next shot, just like that. So you can see how you have a lot more control over the movement. And again, we're gonna add the tricks on top of this to get all the blurring, all the frame blending. Another big thing when it comes to creating this transition, since we started off kind of slow here and then we went into fast for the beat drop, we wanna match that movement so that we're not just going fast, slow. So that way it feels smooth as you move into the next scene. It feels like you're continuing that motion from the first frame. And that's how it really blends together to give you these smooth transitioning looks. So to create a little bit of speed at the beginning here to kind of continue that whip that we had going, what I'm gonna do is we've got our first marked out area here. I'm just gonna move over a couple of frames, and then I'm gonna take that position that we marked out here and I'm just gonna drag to that area. So we made it a lot faster here. You'll see it'll kind of flicker in just like that. And that way we've completed this little speed transition. Just like that. Plus it's on beat. Plus you have that on beat as well because we have a little marker right here, which I didn't add, but if I wanted to, I could just go like that. I dragged over the second part of the little highlighted area. I'm gonna bring that in a little bit closer as well. And then all we need to do is finish off this clip. So now I'm going to grab the end keyframe of this clip, drag this all the way to where this little part is going to end, and then I can trim this. Let's drag over our next clip here. And let's put this on top so it's easier for you guys to see. Now we're gonna do a little bit of a match cut here. We made a whole video before about match cuts. I highly recommend you check that one out if you haven't already. But this next clip, if we go frame by frame, this is two different clips here, but they look very similar. And that's gonna give us this match cut effect when it pops in. It's gonna be very seamless. So we don't have to do any crazy speed ramping to match them together because they're automatically going to go from one to the next just based off the fact that they look similar. Just like that. So as you can see, it kind of pops in, but because this shot is matching, it looks very seamless. So now all we really need to do here is we have this big gap before it really gets close in and crazy. So at this point, we also have some snares, and in Premiere, I added a little bit of cuts just to amplify that. So let's drag to the part where his face is a little bit closer to the camera right here. And at this point, we're going to make a keyframe. So keyframe on the far left and drag that to where the snares are. So we marked it out, it's about right here. And now this is happening a little bit too slow, so I'm just gonna drag this keyframe closer to the beginning, and this will get close to the camera a lot faster. Such as that. So again, make sure you know your basics of how the keyframes are being manipulated, because in my opinion, that's really the key of pulling this off and being able to create exactly what you want. So now let's just add a little bit of our tricks on top so that we can start tying this together. So again, we talked about it before. We're gonna turn on this frame blending switch in the top left here. Just select it once to turn it on for the composition. And now what we're gonna do is, with all of these open, all three of our clips, or however many you want in the transition, go ahead and just double click the frame blending switch to enable that for all of them, and that's going to smooth it out. It's going to add this blurring. Now what we can also do is we can select the keyframes on all of our footage, right click them, go to keyframe assistant, and easy ease them. This is going to blend this animation a lot better. So let's do that for all of these. Right click and easy ease under keyframe assistant. And now we can go into our graph editor. If you're not seeing anything here, you want to make sure that you're clicking on your footage to actually see what's going on. So again, I don't want to really say there's a right way to manipulate this graph editor. It's really up to you. I just recommend you tweak it and try and find things that improve the look. So what I usually like doing is, instead of like doing crazy loops like that, I usually like to bump the second part up. So it's kind of like a wave formation, smoothly hitting and then going up. A lot of it is experimentation. So let's see if we can kind of add a little bit of curvature onto that. I think that looks pretty cool. But in my opinion, I just see the graph editor as more of tweaking the look than adding something that's really needed. If you like how it looks without the graph editor, it's all up to you. We're going to file, save this, and let's pop into Adobe Premiere because I want to put some final touches. So After Effects users, you guys can render this out, see what it looks like. Premiere or dynamic link users, you guys can select this dynamic link clip, go to sequence, and just render the selection so you can see what it looks like. Some of the things that I did to improve this that can really help you along the way is just adding a little bit of post work. And this goes for After Effects and Adobe Premiere. You don't only need Premiere to do this. All of these effects I'm about to put on are also within After Effects. But say, for example, you just want to add a little bit of smoothness going into something. So maybe even something like this point here, maybe you want to add a little bit of a smoother transition. So at the point where it transitions, so right here, I'm going to click Control K. That makes a cut at that position point. I'm gonna move over 2 frames to the left, so arrow key to the left, 1, 2, maybe even 3. You can see what it looks like. Let's stick with 2 for now, make a cut, and back to the middle, and then right arrow keys to the right, 1, 2, select, Control K, make a cut. I'm gonna select this little in-between transition subclip area here, and I'm going to right click and nest that so it's pre-composing them into one. Now I'm gonna go to my effects and presets, and again, these also exist within After Effects, pretty much all the same ones. I'm gonna look up a directional blur. And if you guys have any presets, I have a whole transition preset pack, which skips a lot of this. Like for example, I have my Speed Demon pack where I could just drop this little quick strike. And there's some cool stuff with that. But I just want to add some directional blur straight out of the blur and sharpen, just to kind of add a little bit of emphasis into the movement of my sequence. And this can go in any direction. You'll see my directional blur in my effect controls. Make sure you have that open. Bump up the blur length so you can see something happening. So you can see that blur. And direction, let's have it go sideways. You guys can also keyframe this blur length. So in the middle, right where the transition happens, we'll keyframe it at the beginning here. Let's start it at 0. So it kind of starts at 0 and then whips, and then we put it back at 0 over here. So just like that. And there's some black edges because of the blurring. Sometimes an option will have this like fixed edge pixel, but to fix that, we can just bump up the scale until that goes away. So something very minuscule, 105, like that. And there you go. It just adds a little bit more into that transition to smooth it out and to really emphasize the direction that you're going. So right here, we have that little snare drum at the end. What I'm gonna do is just click C on my keyboard to bring up this little razor. You can also select it there on your toolbar. And I'm just going to zoom in, so Control Alt mouse wheel, zoom in so you can see this very close. And I'm gonna click out just 1 frame cuts. And then I'm gonna click V on my keyboard, just bring up your normal pointer. I'm gonna select every other frame. So hold Shift, select, 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 delete. So we just created these little snare cuts, so you'll see this. Just like that, and with the music, there you go. So those little snare cuts, so those little 1 frame snare cuts always matches that snare drum a lot. You'll see a lot of my personal projects, I do that because it does fit very well, especially for this quick, like speedy motion part. Before we end the tutorial, I just want to show you how you could do some speed remapping in Adobe Premiere as well, because I don't want to just leave it right at After Effects. So to be able to set it up within Adobe Premiere, it's a little bit trickier than After Effects. You need to zoom in here until you can really see this little FX gray bar on your clips. Right click on that gray bar and go to Time Remapping and then enable speed. Now once you've done that, you can select this clip and go up to your effect controls in the top left, and you're going to see this little time remapping section. You open that up and you'll see that the keyframe is enabled here. Now this is basically the exact same thing, time remapping in After Effects, but that's how you go about starting it within Adobe Premiere. So from here, you can use the exact same information and step-by-steps that I showed you in After Effects, such as creating your keyframes. So you click keyframe at starting position, you click your keyframes at wherever the beat drops are. Now once you have those keyframes made, and again, you can click and drag this up if it's hard to see. Now the only real difference with time remapping this way, it's a lot more speed based. So if I want this to be fast here, you'll see my keyframe. What you need to do is you need to click and drag up so that this is at like 200%, 300%, however much you want to speed it up. And then you're gonna see this little ramp that we've created. And alternatively, if you want this to be a slow motion part, you click this line here and you drag down. So you can put that at 50%. We can even open up in our effect controls here. You'll see the line, the graph editor, and you can kind of change that however you'd like. And that'll smooth you into your next speed ramping part. So I can drag this part up to 200. I can smooth out the transition from 200 to the slow motion, and we can have something pretty similar with the little neck swing like we had at the beginning. So hopefully that explains the mechanics for doing it with Adobe Premiere a little bit easier, but mainly again, you need to know how to set it up, you need to know how to create the keyframes, you need to know how to drag the speed up and down, and then you need to know how to blend it just by dragging this little part out to create these little ramps. If you want, you can right click speed duration, you can change your time interpolation to frame blending. So this will add a little bit of the blur. It'll blend together anything and make it a lot more smooth. I hope this video has helped give you guys some insight in creating some smooth transitions, some smooth movement sequences. I think that it can improve a lot of different types of videos, no matter what you are making. You guys can do this with music videos. You guys can do this with travel videos, vlogs, AMV videos, Instagram edits, sports edits. That's why I chose to make a video specifically on this, because again, there's a lot of people who talk about it. There's a lot of people who are using it, but I want to give as much info I have on the subject so that it's easier for you guys to comprehend and use it in an effective way. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for supporting, and I'll see you guys in the next one.